Advance and be recognized, everyone, and welcome to the Sitrep podcast, your forward operation space for all things military and historical wargaming. I am your host, Oriskany Jim, and today we're back with some more modern era wargaming, this time with some actual miniatures on the table. Today's engagement is the Battle of Nasiriyah, one of the opening battles in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. The system we're going to be using is 7 Days to the River Rhine by Great Escape Games, and this is also part of our ongoing observance of the Marine Corps' upcoming 250th birthday, where we set up a series of scenarios that highlight key moments in the Corps' history. Nasiriyah is a pretty sizable city, about 1/3 of the way toward Baghdad from Iraq's southern border, and this is also where we see several major highways and even a rail line converge, along with several bridges over the Euphrates River and the Sitrep Canal. So as the Americans made their advance on Baghdad, clearly Nasiriyah was going to be a key objective. Well planned as it was, the American advance toward Baghdad wasn't perfect, and the very things that made Nasiriyah such a key objective also presented significant traffic control and logistics problems. Remember, these are really big convoys of combat and support vehicles pushing over a long distance against some very aggressive timelines, and as all these roads start to converge at Nasiriyah, things start to get hairy. The end result was a somewhat confused situation where lead units of Regimental Combat Team 2, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Brigade, 2nd Marine Division reached the southern approaches of Nasiriyah during the early morning hours of March 23rd. Part of Regimental Combat Team 2 was tasked with supporting the Army's 3rd Brigade Combat Team, which was already advancing along Highway 1 and swinging around the west side of the city, pushing toward one of these bridges over the Euphrates. The rest of Marine Regimental Combat Team 2, primarily the somewhat colorfully named Task Force Tarawa, was meanwhile given sort of standby orders to prepare to assault and take 2 more bridges over on the east side of Nasiriyah. Now, these bridges were actually inside the city, deep in what was already being called Ambush Alley. Early in the morning hours of March 23rd, these standby orders were abruptly upgraded to get off your asses and get me those bridges. All of this was being done very fast, on the fly, and in the dark. It was a very confused situation, and sometimes American units didn't even know where other friendly units actually were. So confused was the situation that one U.S. Army unit, the 507th Maintenance Company out of Fort Bliss, Texas, made a series of wrong turns, and before they knew it, they were actually driving towards these bridges that Task Force Tarawa was about to attack. In the process, they blundered into the operational area of the Iraqi 6th Armored Division, that's part of their 3rd Corps, who were suddenly putting up some very, very strong and frankly unexpected resistance. The 507th took some very steep casualties, and before you know it, they found themselves pinned down under some very heavy fire. Needless to say, the 507th needed help, and they needed it now. So whatever confusion there might have been about Task Force Tarawa's orders, that was pretty much settled. They were now driving toward those bridges. And this is the engagement we have on our table today, where the Marines have to break through Iraqi defenses and relieve the 507th. In today's scenario, John is playing the Marines, including some M1A1 Abrams main battle tanks of Able Company 8th Marine Tank Battalion. Now, clearly, John has a huge firepower advantage over Mark, who is once again being a great sport and playing the Iraqis of the 6th Armored Division. Now, John, however, does have a very tough mission, and he's up against a very tight deadline. He's got to break at least 1/3 of his force clean off the north end of the table before it's too late. The Iraqis also have IEDs, or Improvised Explosive Devices. I've drawn up some experimental house rules just to sort of try them out and see how this kind of weapon can work in a game of 7 Days to the River Rhine. We'll go over all those house rules as the video progresses, but for now, let's head over to the footage and see how our recreation of the Battle of Nasiriyah turns out. Okay, here is our table. It measures 8 feet wide and 6 feet deep. We are looking out of the south into the north, and this main highway that you see here is that road that leads from the Euphrates River Bridge, which would be just south of this table, toward the Sitrep Canal Bridge, which would be somewhere off of the north end of the table. So the Iraqis are all set up. They get to set up within the first 2 feet of the north end of the table. you'll notice all these blue counters. These are possible IEDs, Improvised Explosive Devices. 2/3 of them are fake, 12 of them are dummies or fakes, and 6 of them are real. So as the Marines advance, they're definitely going to have to keep an eye on those. We do have rules for how those are going to get spotted and potentially counter-engaged by the Marines as they advance. Do bear in mind, this is literally like the opening week or two of Operation Iraqi Freedom, when the IEDs were extremely primitive. They're literally like a backpack or a trash can, possibly even with still wires coming out of it, sitting in the middle of a parking lot somewhere. Later on in the war, of course, the IEDs would become much more advanced to the point where we'd have to make up new rules for them. But here we have the Marines all set up. They can come in anywhere on the south end of the table, and it looks like John has decided to set up everything over to the east, and his mission is to get at least 1/3 of his force off the north end of the table between those two yellow markers you see there on the north end of the table. He also has to keep at least 1/3 of his force here on the table intact to secure a path of either supply or potential retreat. So basically it means is he can't afford to lose more than 1/3 of his force. Here are the Marines set up and ready to go. This is a pretty big game, so the Marines are coming on with a pretty big attack force. It includes M1A1 Abrams main battle tanks, LAV-25s, and of course the AAV-7 amphibious assault vehicles. Notice I have the new kit-bashed, scratch-built turrets on there. This was to turn them from the old LVTP-7s into the new AAVs. The Marines also have quite a bit of infantry on the table. And do notice that all of our AAVs are carrying 2 teams instead of 1. This is a house rule we use for AAVs because they are exceptionally large APCs. They carry a lot more troops than your usual APCs. The Iraqis are all set up with a lot of the predictable T-55 main battle tanks, BTR-60 APCs, and some Type 69 QMs. These are Chinese-built tanks that the Iraqis had at Nasiriyah. Those are pretty dangerous. They do have a laser rangefinder. Okay, so the game is now officially underway. The Marines start off with the initiative. So John is going to go ahead and activate that first Abrams, move it forward under 12 inches. They do count as fast MBTs. And now he's going to take a shot. He does have line of sight just barely on that T-55. Now he does have thermal sight, so he'll get to ignore all of that partial cover. Okay, he needs a 5 up because he did move in the same activation. He rolls a 1, and so that is a clean miss. Not a great way to start. Private Pile, what are you trying to do to my beloved Corps? Okay, a second Abrams has now joined the first, and he's going to rinse repeat, try the same process. Another 1! Holy crap, what is going on with the Marines here? Okay, one of the Marine tanks has reactivated, so that 5 was his successful reactivation. We'll put a second activation token next to that first Abrams. Now, technically, he's not moving this activation, so he no longer has to roll against a 5. He gets to roll against a 4 up to hit instead of a 5. But this is also his second activation, so he has to add 1 for that. So he goes from a 5+ to hit down to a 4+ to hit back to a 5+ to hit. Long story short, take your first shot. So here he goes with a 5 up to hit. He picks up a 10-sider. Let's see if he can get it done. A 3rd miss in a row. Marines, I don't know what you've been drinking last night, but you need to shake it off. Alright, the second tank with the 4th shot finally scores with a 9. Holy crap, that took 4 shots to finally land a hit on that T-55, but the Marines have finally found the range. Okay, now to penetrate, and this is going to get messy, because that M1 is packing a hell of a gun, as I'm sure you all know. The firepower on that gun is at 11, so John is going to roll a D10, add 11 to the result, and he has to beat a total of 14. So basically he has to roll higher than a 3. And with a 4, wow, he barely got it done. So 4 plus 11 equals 15. You have to beat the armor to penetrate the tank, so he barely got it done. 4 shots to finally hit the tank, and he only barely got it done, but that T-55 is working. Okay, some Marine infantry are now attempting to ascertain whether or not that suspicious backpack or trash can or pile of debris is or is not an actual Iraqi IED on the extreme eastern end of the table. So we have some experimental house rules for this. Different types of units have a different roll they have to make on a D6. For infantry, it's pretty easy. There's a lot of eyes in an infantry unit, and they're out in the open. He needed a 3-up, he barely got it. So what we do now is we flip that counter to see if it's a real IED or not. Turns out it's a dummy, so it is removed from play. Okay, John is now bringing in the Pennsylvania Air National Guard in the form of this A-10 Thunderbolt II, or Warthog if you prefer. Now, clearly, we do fixed-wing airstrikes a little differently than in normal 7 days to the River Rhine. The way we handle it is you pay quite a few points per strike. You don't get the whole aircraft, but you pay points per the strike. So he's going to go ahead and use one of them now. There's just one problem. Historically, with these Warthogs, there was a very unfortunate blue-on-blue friendly fire incident, so we wanted to account for that in our game. If John rolls a 1 here, that Warthog will attack a Marine unit instead of an Iraqi unit. But he rolled a 9, history does not repeat itself, and that Warthog is now going to attack Iraqi targets. Again, he only gets 2 strikes in this entire game. He can't bring it in over and over and over again, like say it's a helicopter gunship. And he has a couple of choices. He has Mavericks, or we have, of course, house rules for his 30mm chain gun as well. But before we get to any of that, the Iraqis are going to have some air defense fire that we have to resolve. So Mark chooses to try to activate this Manpads team on the roof of this 3-story building. He has to roll a 3-up on a d6 to react in time. And with a 2, he does not. Alright, so his, quote, opportunity fire, if you want to call it that, is going to fail. And the A-10 strike will come in. It still costs him his activation token, but that missile will not fire before the A-10 comes in. Now, I do kind of rob Mark a little bit here. I do apologize. That missile still should have fired, but only after the A-10 makes its strike. Alright, so John has decided to make the strike with a Maverick, and he easily hits. He only needed to roll a 3-up to hit with the Maverick. The gun is less accurate, but it can hit more targets. So now the penetration is kind of a joke. It's a 12 to penetrate. It's going to hit the roof armor of that tank. There's no special armor. That T-55 is smoked. Good job, Mr. Warthog. You actually attacked the right targets this time. That's it for now. Okay, John has now passed the initiative over to Mark and the Iraqis. In 7 days to the River Rhine, you see players doing this quite a bit because, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, with these red poker checks for the Iraqis and the blue poker checks for the Marines, you only get so many activations in your turn. And you don't want to use up all of your activations and then pass initiative over to your opponent, and the opponent still has all of his activations. If you haven't reserved some of your activations, you can't react to what your opponent is doing. So players tend to pass back and forth as the turn progresses. For now, Mark is activating this T-55 actually twice, so we'll put 2 red checks there, and he's bashing through all my hedges and my walls. Mark loves to attrite my terrain, as he likes to put it, and he is, of course, also making terrain checks for all these obstacles. He is also being supported by this anti-tank guided weapons team that has climbed to the top of this building. You will see a red poker check, there it is, at the base of that. That shows what he has activated. And he is pretty much providing high cover, so to speak, to sort of cover the advance of the Iraqi tanks. Because, yes, tanks plural, he'll be bringing in some more. And the Marines can't react because they can't see it, they're blocked by too many intervening buildings. So, yep, here is some more attrition of my terrain, as Mark loves to do. No worries. In fact, I'm going to break out some more small pieces of hedge so we can sort of make change and open up new holes in my hedges there. And more tanks are developing against the Marine left. Yep, there they are. And, oh, this is actually one of those Type 69 QMs. Those are actually more dangerous tanks. They have British-made 105mm rifles and the beginnings of a laser rangefinder, so watch out for those guys. So in summary, we have quite a significant Iraqi threat here. 2 tanks and a BTR-60. Looks like Mark is also going to be moving up some infantry in just a second. And that is all sort of building up against the Marine left. So if the Marines try to get on that highway and blitz off the north end of the table, as the mission does require them, the Iraqis know what the Marines are trying to do here. They have a pretty significant threat to watch out for there on their left wing. The Marines now are actually under fire. That little Humvee there is going to draw some missile fire from this AT-3 Sager anti-tank missile team here on the roof of this building. So there is the firing unit, and tracing the line of sight as best we can, we do see where he can barely see a little bit of that Humvee. So we're going to give the Iraqis a +1 penalty to their chance to hit for partial cover. And he is going to go ahead and try to shoot. However, the Marines do get a chance to react. So if he chooses, which he has, you see he did put an extra blue token next to that Humvee, John is going to try to react. Normally it's a 4-up to react against infantry, but that Humvee has already acted this turn, so the difficulty on a D6 now goes up to a 5-up on a D6 to see if that Humvee can react in time. He fails abysmally with a 1, so that Iraqi missile fire will actually take place first. Unfortunately for the Iraqis, with that 1, their missile doesn't even come close to the target. I don't even think they hit the right zip code. So God knows where that missile went. Didn't go into that Humvee, that's for sure, and now that Humvee will get to shoot. We do consider, we have some house rules for how 50 cals work. We kind of consider them as very small autocannons. So basically he's going to roll to hit, and he has rolled to hit, no worries there. And again, we're counting them as very small cannons. So it's definitely AT under 7. He's already gotten his 1d10 because he's way over 12 inches, as you see here on the chart. And he does get 1d6 to try to convert or get extra damage. And the Iraqi unit is considered in the open because they are on a rooftop. So long story short, take your second shot. He needs a 4, 5, or 6 on a d6. Easily gets that. So it's 1 hit for the actual hit, and then he converted for an extra level of damage. That's 2 white poker checks. Now, as you can see, the anti-tank team only has a morale of 3. Once he takes more than 3 hits, he's considered destroyed. John is now going to try to reactivate this LAV-25. Notice he has a second poker check on him. You can activate a unit in this game more than once. You just have to roll a d6 and beat the total number of tokens he's already carrying, either prior activations or morale tokens. So he easily did that with that 5. He is going to engage that Iraqi anti-tank team. He has thermal sights, so he gets to ignore any partial cover. And that 4A, that A means it's an autocannon. So in an autocannon, you get to roll twice and use the best result. Doesn't matter here; both of those were hits. We'll count the 9 just to be formal. So that's definitely going to be a hit. It's a gun, AT under 7 because it only has a firepower of 4. And he's already scored 1 hit. Now he gets to roll that 1d6 to convert. And again, that team is considered in the open. 4, 5, or 6. A 6. Alright, that is 2 more morale tokens against that anti-tank team. He's now carrying a total of 4. And remember, he only has a morale of 3. So once an infantry unit sustains more morale tokens than it has morale level, that's the only way, really, in this game where you can destroy an anti-tank team. And that anti-tank team is out of gas. To wrap up the Marine turn, this 3rd Abrams has now moved forward and taken this building under some probably HE frag fire. And as you can probably see there, inflicted 2 white morale tokens against that new Iraqi rifle team at the upper levels of that larger 4-story building. Okay, so to quickly wrap up, we're now at the end of turn 1. Both sides have used all their activation tokens. So far, the Iraqis have lost these 2 armored vehicles that you see burning here, and also the anti-tank team that used to be on top of that building. So that is going to be 3 less activation tokens Mark will have for next turn. Starting off for turn 2, John has opened fire on, I promise, there was a building there. That's where the building was. There's just a pile of building there now. His Abrams just kept launching HE frag into that structure. Finally did 5 morale tokens on the infantry team that was in there. And once the infantry squad was gone, we said, you know what, just for fun, let's go ahead and knock down the building as well. And just to be clear, that was Abrams number 1, number 2, and number 3 that did the work and eliminated that threat. Continuing the turn, these 2 Abrams are going to go ahead and try to reactivate. You see where 1 succeeded and 1 failed. There's the guy that failed. He was busy watching that first building come down and was yelling into the radio, "That's some serious upfuckery there, yahoo!" Meanwhile, his hand was on the radio mic and no one could get through to him. There's the commander. You can see him standing there on the hatch. He's yelling at him to get the hell off the radio. So he was able to reactivate, and he has put his first round into this other Iraqi team in the second building. So there is his first roll to hit, and here is the result. Clearly the Marines did not get the brief about excessive collateral damage in this advance, because they are just literally landscaping their way through this table and just destroying every building from which they draw even a little bit of Iraqi rifle fire. So 2 teams have been eliminated. This one's about to go. And it looks like John is going to activate this mortar team here to finish the job. We do have some house rules for how we deal with mortars. I feel they aren't really done justice in 7 Days to the River Rhine. So onboard mortars get 3 shots. They start off with an 8+, then a 7, then a 6. That's how the rounds sort of get easier to hit as they continue to make adjustments. So John scores with his first one, his second one, and believe it or not, on his third one he misses. So he has scored 2 hits. That's going to be 2 automatic levels of morale damage. Now he's going to try to convert on the 2 hits that he did score. Again, he scored for 2 and missed with his third one. So he's going to get 1d6 to convert per hit. So he gets 2d6, he missed on both of them. So that's only 2 additional morale tokens, but given the damage they had already sustained, that's more than enough to finish off that Iraqi rifle squad, and yeah, that's the end of that. Here comes a Marine Humvee driving up to engage, and real quick, some more house rules, because again, we do count 50 cals as small autocannon. We've seen how that works against infantry targets, but we do want 50 cals to have some ability to penetrate armor on thinly armored vehicles, or especially soft-skinned vehicles. So, 5 up to hit, make that a 6 up to hit because the Humvee has moved, make that a 7 up because that Iraqi technical there has partial cover and the Humvee does not have thermal sights. It's a autocannon. He gets to roll twice and use the best result. One of those was a hit. Now to penetrate. The 50 cal has a 2 penetration value. Makes sense since a 25mm has a 4. He rolled a 6 and 2 makes that an 8. That does beat the 7 armor on the technical. That's the end of him. Here comes the A-10 back again. Alright, so John is bringing in his A-10 Warthog. Again, he only has 2 strikes available. This is his second one, and this time Mark has reacted with his Manpads team. So, he needs an 8 up as usual to engage helicopters. With our house rules, he needs a 9 up to engage a fixed-wing aircraft. And Mark does miss with a 6. So the missile went up in time, it just missed. Okay, now the Shilka is going to get to shoot. And yes, the Iraqis did have Shilkas at Nasiriyah. There are photographs to back that up. So Mark is going to go ahead and roll to activate. And the dice is way over there by that hill, so that is definitely going to be a successful activation. The Shilka is also going to get to fire in time. It needs a 6 up to hit as an anti-aircraft gun. Okay, so... oh, Mark rolls a 5. That was so close. Alright, long story short, take your third shot. That pilot might need a new flight suit when he returns to base because those tracers were coming really, really close. And there we are so far, folks. Call me crazy, but I think John is just starting to click into just how much firepower his Marine units have, and he's doing a great job leveraging that to suppress Iraqi defenses before he starts taking too much damage in return. It's costing him time, however, and remember, John is up against a very tight timeline. Also, Mark hasn't dropped any of his off-board artillery missions yet, and spoiler alert, that's one of his more powerful weapons. He's also developing some pretty significant counterattacks building up against the Marine left wing, so please come back next week to see how the rest of this game shakes out. And that's where we're going to leave it for now, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Please remember to hit that notification bell. Also, please consider joining the Sitrep Podcast Discord. There is an auto-accept invitation link to our Discord down in the description of this video. Join our community, see what everybody's up to, and best of all, show us what's happening on your hobby table. But for now, this is Oriskany Jim with the Sitrep Podcast. We are rounds complete for another episode. And as always, Tango Mike for watching.